Good morning, everybody. It is good to see you all. It was wonderful to see you all in the cafe, hanging out and connecting with one another and touching base after holidays. It is good to have you all here. If you're online with us, we're glad that you are here this morning as well. Just a couple of things. Everybody's like shifting to this side. I feel like I'm going to fall over on that side now. Just a couple of things that you need to be aware of. But let me just first say, how many of you have the Church Center app on your phone, if you have a phone or a device? Excellent. Anything I'm about to say is on there. So that is the easiest way to stay up to date. Check that events tab and you'll see exactly what's happening in the life of the branch. And you'll be able to sign up for things and get more information. Usually that is the most updated place to find all the things, okay? So pay attention there. Just a couple that I want to highlight this morning. Branch students, if you're in 6th through 12th grade, you get to go ice skating today. It snowed this morning. It's like the perfect little winter day, if that's your jam. If you haven't signed up for that yet, there's still room. So there's lunch right after worship, about 11:30, and then heading downtown to Rosa Parks Circle. Parents, you're picking up from Rosa Parks Circle. Yes, leaders, am I correct on this? 2:30, pick up your students. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen to them. Just kidding. All right. One other thing I want to make note of here too. There is also in your Church Center app, there's information about a whole bunch of projects in this building that we need to get done. There's also this QR code. If you have a couple of hours in the next month sometime, there's a whole bunch of projects that I would say most any skill level of like building things could tackle. There's some organization things, some cleaning things, and then there are some things that actually require some skill. But if you could take a look at that, whatever we don't get done in the next few weeks, we're gonna have a work day in February too. So, and then we can come together and do some of those projects together. Okay? All right. Nicole is going to come up here and lead us in our call to worship. We do this most every week. We have some sort of piece of liturgy, some sort of conversation back and forth a little bit, just to really say, this is a different sort of moment. This is a space where we get to intentionally gather together. So we use these words to kind of frame that time together, to step into that threshold, if you will. So Nicole's going to lead us in that.
We come together in this place and time with gratitude for the gift of life and the opportunity to worship as a community. Gratefully, we enter this space, acknowledging our shared humanity and the interconnectedness of our journeys. We come with a diversity of experiences and ideas, not better or worse, just different. The scriptures help to remind us of the beauty found in humility. So we come with open hands and open hearts. Let us shed any masks of pride and self-sufficiency, recognizing that true strength is found in vulnerability and genuine wisdom blossoms in the soil of humility. In the songs we sing, in the words we hear, in the quiet moments of reflection, let us consider the example of Jesus, who showed us that the path to wholeness and transformation is through humility. Help us, O God, follow in the footsteps of Christ, one another love.
Thanks, Nicole and CJ. The band is going to come up here and going to lead us in a song. This is a song that we have sung quite a few times at the branch. It's called "Awake My Soul." You all can go up while I'm talking here. And sometimes if we sing songs a bunch, we can just kind of sing them and not really think about them, right? So I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of phrases in this song. The very first verse says, "Breathe on me, breath of God," which can maybe sound a little weird. Can maybe, if you didn't grow up in church circles, or if you didn't grow up in Christianity, or maybe even if you did, maybe it's sometimes hard to understand those kind of words. But I want to encourage you to, or invite you to think of that word breath as God's Spirit. In the Old Testament, the word for spirit is ruach. We've talked about this before, I think, here. And it's the same word for God's Spirit and wind and movement. So maybe today, can we use this as a way to say, maybe not inviting God's presence in, because, friends, God's already with us no matter what. But can we use this song as a way to say, today I want to be aware of God's Spirit moving in and among me, in and among you, and our gathering together. May that be true of us. Will you stand and sing with us this morning?
Breathe on me, breath of God, breathe on me. Breathe on me, breath of God, breathe on me. I come alive, I'm alive when you breathe on me. I come alive, I'm alive when you breathe on me. Speak to me, word of God, speak to me. Speak to me, word of God, speak to me. I come alive, I'm alive when you speak to me. Whoa. I come alive, I'm alive when you speak to me. From death to life, for you alone. Awake my soul. Awake, awake, awake my soul. God, resurrect these bones from death to life, for you alone. Awake my soul. Awake, awake, awake my soul.
You all can have a seat for a minute. From death to life, resurrect these bones. I think the new year is a good opportunity for us to think about some of the things that bring us life, that bring us wholeness, that help us live into who we are, right? Some people call them resolutions. I don't love that word because I just break them. But I do like this idea of setting some intentions and living intentionally into who we want to be, right? And we're gonna have a few weeks here in the new year that we're gonna talk about some intentional ways to be like Christ, right? The compassion and love of Christ that we spoke those words about a little bit earlier. And one of those ways is by choosing humility. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about this morning. So we wanted to start with a time to just take a couple of breaths and say, humility is not the easiest thing in the world to do, right? It's not our go-to. So can we take a couple of breaths, sit, maybe say some words together, and just have some moments of silence to think about what this might be in our life. So I'm going to speak 4 prompts here in a minute here, and I'll speak the words and then allow a little bit of time of silence for you to sit and reflect. Maybe you want to find a comfortable position to sit. Maybe you want to ground yourself, root firmly in the ground, in the floor here. Maybe you want to sit with open hands. Maybe you want to close your eyes. Whatever that posture of reflection and receptivity is for you, I invite you into that in this moment as we pray together. Brian, will you put these words up for me too, please? God, we confess and we let go of the need to be always right. We confess and let go of the belief that I am the most important. I confess and let go of the desire to be self-sufficient. I confess and let go of the fear of being forgotten. For all of these things, God, we bring them to you, and we ask your Spirit to move in us and to help us really let these things go so that we can live into wholeness and flourishing for us, for all those around us, and for your whole creation. Amen. Kiddos, you are going to go downstairs. You were invited to go downstairs with Tara and Bethany. So you all can go gather at the back. But can we all stand up? We're going to try something today. We're going to send these kids out with a blessing. So everybody stand up. Kiddos, you can make your way to the back. We are going to say a blessing over your time together. And then you all can say hello to somebody around you. So the blessing is up here if you want to extend a hand backwards, if you want to look at kids, if you just want to, I don't know, hold the hand of a kid next to you or something like that. Let's say this blessing on these kids as they go. May your time together be filled with wonder, joy, and friendship. You are loved. Have a great time, kiddos. We'll see you back here in a little bit. The rest of you, say hello to somebody nearby.
All right, folks, why don't we grab a seat? Welcome, good morning, Happy New Year. Good to be with you in maybe the first Sunday that does feel like winter, for better or for worse. It's good to see your faces, glad to be in this space together. I want to begin with a question and tell a story around it. I'm wondering if anyone has ever been locked out. Anyone ever been locked? A few of you, yes? It's a pretty frustrating experience, isn't it? To have what you need kind of on the other side of a door and not be able to get in or to get to it. We were down in Kalamazoo for a birthday party about a year and a half ago, and our normal car was being repaired, and so we had a rental car. And we drove it down there and went into the home and had this great time, and then we got ready to leave, and I started to do the pat down. Have you ever done this? Oh no. Where are the keys? Bethany, where are the keys? And she does, the pat down too. And then panic starts to come because you've checked all the places, and we go out to the vehicle that we've rented. It is locked, and sitting on the console are the keys. This is a newer car, but apparently it's not smart enough to know that the keys are in it and it lets you lock it. Does this happen to anybody? My car doesn't let me lock it if the keys are in it, but this one did. This rental did. Little side story, I did the exact same thing the next morning, a Sunday morning coming here. I locked them in the car again. I went in, forgot something in the house, it locked on its own. That's what it does. That's right, it locks on its own after a certain period of time anyway. So, we got to call the tow truck and they come. But it's really frustrating because right there is what you need. In this instance, I can see what I want and what I need in order to leave and move forward with my life. I've been thinking about that story this week as I've been thinking about a story from the Gospel of Luke and about these conversations we're going to have over the next few weeks. And I want to talk today about what I think in many ways is a key. Something that I think is essential to unlocking the door to the life that I think we know we're meant to live. And without this key, I think the door stays closed. I don't think that we experience the life that we deep down know we are meant for without this key. And that key that I'm talking about is humility, of course, if you didn't pick that up already. Let's look at Luke 18. This is a story Jesus tells. We're going to kind of go through it verse by verse, and I'm going to ask for a little bit of feedback along the way. I want to hear your thoughts in a couple spots. But Luke begins in verse 9 with this: "To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable." So we as the reader are being clued into what this story is about. This is like the preamble. Hey everyone, this is a story about what? It's about people who are confident of their own rightness. That's what righteousness means. And they look down on everyone else. So Jesus apparently has these people in mind. Luke clues us into that. And now hear Jesus' words. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. This is the setup, okay? What is Jesus doing here, do you think? What do we think when we hear him say these words? Contrasting and comparing? Absolutely. Yep. In what ways or how? Yeah.
We've already judged who's righteous.
Very good. Yeah. We, even in our 21st century context, absolutely the people Jesus is talking to have already made judgments about these two people. Of course they had. These are two categories that everyone knows. These are two types of people everyone is well aware of, and they're very different people. The most different you could imagine. What would be some common, if we were to put this into our language today, what might be the two characters that we would have if Jesus was telling the story today, do you think? Who'd be the bad guy? Who's the bad guy in this scenario? Tax collector. So who would be that person? What's that? IRS agent. Excellent. Okay. What else? A politician. Lawyer. Ooh. Elliot's not here today. That's good. Elliot, if you're online, we love you. Who's marginalized today? Not just bad. Who's on the outside? A lot of people. Pick your group. Pick your person. They could easily fit into this blank of Pharisee, or of tax collector. And who's the Pharisee, of course? The good guy. Who would be a comparison today? Excellent. Oh boy, wrong answer. I'm flattered and not. How about a clergy person? Yes. In that sense, true. In that sense, true. Yep. Maybe. It's probably anyone who kind of has a confidence about themselves, that they are kind of absolutely right, fully right, and you're naming one particular group that often fits into that, perhaps, that category. But there are all across the political spectrum people who, of course, think that they are absolutely right. Okay. But just again, what is Jesus doing? He's drawing a contrast. He's setting the story up, right? He's setting the story up. A good guy and a bad guy, a good person and a bad person. Verse 11, the Pharisee stood by himself and prayed. Now, what do you think the people who are listening to Jesus think this prayer is going to be like? What is it going to sound like? What might it be about? If you didn't know the rest of the story, what are you imagining Jesus might say next? Very lofty, these and thous, sure. Certain languages used, maybe. Yeah, probably. They're probably imagining that. These are the people who know how to pray. These are the people who pray all the time. It's going to sound really good. We say this sometimes, don't we? Like, wow, you're a really good prayer. I remember being told that when I was young, and therefore I thought, well, I guess I better be a pastor because it just made sense. I remember people saying this or hearing someone say it about someone else. Wow, that prayer was really amazing, really good. Now, people are probably thinking the Pharisee's going to pray something like that because that's what they would do. It would be expected. Here's the prayer, Jesus says. God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. How do you think someone listening to Jesus tell this story about a Pharisee praying, how do you think they might have responded to this prayer? What do you think they might have thought of it? And thought of the Pharisee who prayed it? No, they would know which side the Pharisee was on? Is that? Yeah. Yeah, that would certainly, I think, be possible that many of the people listening to this would find this to be a pretty good prayer. Like expected. we might kind of revolt against it and say, how could he pray such a thing? What an arrogant punk. But most people in Jesus' day thought, if not nearly everyone thought, that Pharisees were better people. Clergy are better than fill in the blank, right? They just are. And so I bristle at this prayer, but I wonder how many of Jesus' listeners would have been like, yeah, that checks. A little harsh, but, the general idea is true. I wonder, I won't ask you to say this out loud, but I am curious what we would put in this blank. If God, I thank you that I am not like. I wonder what you and what I would put in that blank if we were praying this prayer. Are there people or groups of people that we kind of quietly, probably to ourselves, might be tempted to say, thank you, God, that I'm not like so-and-so? Just invite us to consider that point of view as well. So this is the prayer of the Pharisee, verse 13, but the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Here's the punchline. I tell you that this tax collector, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted or lifted up. And here's the key that I was talking about earlier. The key that opens the door to the life that I think we all are meant to live, and the one that we really desire deep down. And that key is humility. But I wonder, when I was writing this this week, and I write out most of my sermon, and then most of what I say is from here, but some of it gets ad-libbed, and you can probably tell which parts are which. But when I was writing this part out, there was a part of me that wanted to resist what I had just typed out. That humility is the key that opens the door to the life that we are meant to live. There was a part of me as I typed it that was like, no. And I had to pause for a moment and kind of consider that. I guess it's not surprising. Most everything that you and I hear every day says something different, says that the way to get the life that you want is by elevating yourself, by rising, climbing the ladder, climbing over others up the ladder. That's how you get the life that you want. And that's so consistently messaged to us that I think there's probably a part in all of us that resist humility really strongly. For that reason, and just the fact that our ego likes to be the ego in which everyone else revolves around. And humility is inviting us to something different. So Jesus comes along and says that I tell you, this tax collector, the one who's humble, is the one who's justified. So let's look at this story again, and let's see what Jesus says, and then weigh, because here's the thing about any time you read the Bible, you have to decide whether or not you believe it. I mean, you understand this, right? We make this decision every time we read the Bible. Do we believe this to be true or not? Does it have resonance with us? Does it have a bearing on our life? We can answer yes, or we can answer no. And that question is always before us. So let me offer a few ideas about this text. 3 things that I think Jesus is saying. And then you have to weigh and decide, is this true? Does this have bearing on my life? The first thing is this. I think in this story, Jesus is showing us that humility is the key that opens the door to growth and maturity. The Message translation of the Bible, which is a very, it's a translation that uses everyday language to get at the text, the ancient text. Eugene Peterson, who wrote it, translates verse 14 this way: if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. When you are content to accept and love your truest self, not your false self. Do you know what I mean by that phrase? False self being this kind of image of ourselves that we create, that we all have false selves, ways that we project ourselves to the world or present ourselves to the world, or you could think of it as masks that we put on to try and navigate the world. When we're content to let our false selves go, and we are willing to accept and explore our truest selves, it's then that more becomes available to us. I grew up, no one's fault. I learned this in part from my family of origin. I also chose this. But I learned to repress certain emotions growing up, especially sadness. I came to think of sadness as weakness. Some of you, that is not your story, and I envy you, although you probably have different stories to tell about your upbringing, things that you learned. But I learned that. So that when my dad died at age 17, I was 17 years old, or my best friend died when I was 14, I remember in both of their deaths crying one time. And I actually also remember kind of thinking, wow, I sure am strong. Like it was a kind of a badge that I wore that I only cried once. Because sadness was a weakness. There were certain emotions that I really didn't think were okay to show. Well, in my 20s, that started to shift a little bit with the help of friends and really my relationship with the woman that would become my wife. I began to understand that I was not a whole person. I was not my truest self when I pushed down and repressed certain parts of myself, including emotions like sadness. But my response when I started to learn this was resistance. I had spent 20-some years operating in the world in a certain way, pushing things down, and you know what? It kind of worked in some ways. This is the thing, the ways that we learn to navigate the world as young people, we keep them on board because they work to a point. And so when I pushed things down, that was actually beneficial to me in some ways. I didn't have to maybe feel embarrassed. I felt like I could just get back to work and accomplish things. There were certain advantages. It worked. But when I started to encounter this, and then through therapy, that was another big part of my journey of learning to embrace and be open to all the parts of myself, including sadness and many other things. There was always resistance to the change that was being proposed. And you know what this is like. Take this conversation about emotions out of it. Pick anything in your life that you have wanted to change, any part of yourself. And I bet that even though there's been a part of you that's wanted to change, there's been another part of you that has not. You like things the way they are. It kind of works. It's what you know. And so there's always this battle. And part of that is connected to our ego, our pride. Don't tell me who I have to be. Don't tell me I should be sad or embrace sadness. I'm doing just fine, thank you very much. That's my ego. And so that's my resistance. It wasn't until I was humble enough to say, I might not have everything figured out. I might not navigate the world in the best way always, that's humility, that this door began to open to growth. I think humility is the key that opens the door to maturity, to depth, to our own personal development and transformation. So Jesus seems to be saying this in this passage. If you are prideful and arrogant and think that you have it all figured out and that you've kind of nailed it all down, you are not going to grow and mature and deepen. You'll stay where you are. It's the key to growth and maturity. It's also the key, I think, to each other. Or to say it in the opposite way, pride shuts the door to each other. It creates a barrier between us. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector, and the Pharisee stood by himself. It's an interesting detail that the text includes. Perhaps wanting us to see that pride creates separation in every form. We've already talked about how the Pharisee and the tax collector were separated socially, and certainly relationally. They never would share a table together or enter each other's homes. But there's even a physical separation here in the text that the text points out to us to, again, try and just elevate this reality, this truth, that pride creates distance between us. So we have to be willing to admit we've made a mistake. We have to be willing to say we're sorry. We have to be willing to say, I need you. We have to be willing to say, I don't know it all. You might be right. Even though society tells us we should keep our distance from those who are different than us, or who think of the world differently, or think of anything differently, and even religion sometimes seems to tell us that that person over there should be our enemy. Choosing the way of Jesus means to choose the way of humility. To not stand by ourselves over there, separate, better than, not in need of the other, but to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other. If we do that, the door to each other, to community, to meaningful relationships opens. Without it, I think it stays locked. It is the key that opens the door to growth and maturity. Humility is the key that opens the door to each other. And I think Jesus also shows us that it is the key that opens the door to a deeper spirituality. This, again, is the punchline of the story. I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. The Message translates it, this tax man, not the other, went home made right with God. Pride and arrogance puts our relationship with God out of sync. It puts up a wall between us. And this makes sense, of course, because pride says, I don't need anyone else. I don't need you. I don't need God. And so a door, a barrier, comes up between us and whomever we are interacting with, including the divine. What's interesting here in this story, one of the things that's interesting to me, is that the Pharisee seemed pretty confident that he was on the path to a deeper spirituality. Right? He says, I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. I'm not like those other people. I do this. I do this. Now let's think about this carefully for just a moment. Can fasting and generosity deepen your spirituality? Yes. So why doesn't the Pharisees' fasting and tithing lead to more depth? Why doesn't it make him right with God? Because of the key that we've been talking about. He performs those things for his own benefit, to prove that he's better than, to make himself feel really good about himself. And so Jesus, just to be clear, is not teaching us that fasting or tithing or being generous are to be avoided. That's not what Jesus is saying here. In fact, it's the opposite. Spiritual practices like these two and many others are wise to engage in. I hope you know that. I think you do. But they must be done with a humble heart. We give away some of what we have, we tithe, because we recognize that everything we have is a gift. That's the starting point of being generous. And if it is the starting point, it can open the door to a deeper connection with God. I fast not to look good or to prove that I'm better than so-and-so. I fast because I know that fasting helps me better understand myself. Fasting is tough. Tithing is tough. Being generous is difficult. These things are a challenge. They are, again, disciplines often called, but they teach us something about ourselves. They can, if we're humble. So humility is this key that opens the door to the life that we want, to each other, to our own growth, to our relationship with God. Will we choose it is really kind of the question, I think. And at the start of this new year, it's not uncommon to find people asking questions like, who do I want to be? Right? This is very, very normal as a part of our New Year's just cultural process. Who do I want to be? It's a good question. It's a good question. It's an important question. It's often the starting point to change. But I would also contend it's not enough to just ask this question. I think we also have to ask, who will I choose to be? These are related questions, but they are not the same. In order to change, we must choose. We must be intentional and purposeful. And so today, as we consider humility, it's one thing to say, I want to be more humble. I want to be a person who practices humility more regularly. And that would be good. It would be a good thing to say. I encourage you to say that. But it's just the starting point. If that's all we do is say, I'd like to be that, it probably will not happen. Not much will change. And so how do we choose humility? Let me offer just a couple of quick possibilities. I think one thing we can do, this may feel even a bit too obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. We say it. How do we choose humility? We say that we are choosing humility. Like to ourselves and maybe to someone we know, we clue them in and we clue ourselves into the fact that we would like to purposefully and intentionally live with humility. And that act is valuable because it takes this abstract idea or this thing, this virtue that we know of, and it helps bring it into this current moment in a more concrete way. And so you can say it now and today, but you can also say it when you're in an argument with someone. I had a conflict this week with someone, and I was in the middle of kind of talking it out, feeling this tension to just try and get my own way. Just try and win and be right, And I tried to say in that moment, hold on, I want to choose a different way. I want to choose humility. So what does that mean? You could maybe do that too, or when the Burger King commercial jingle tells you that at BK you can have it your way because you rule, You could actually, this sounds silly, but I'm going to actually make this as a serious possibility. You could hear that commercial and say to yourself, good try, Burger King. I want to choose a different way. This morning, as I was just kind of going over this sermon again, I came to this part. BK, have it your way. You rule. I sang the jingle to myself. It's a good jingle. It works. And then I practiced. I was like, no, hold on, Burger King. I choose humility. And again, I felt in me a part of me resisting that statement. So I'm kind of joking, but not joking about the Burger King thing, or any other place in culture where you find this. It's really incessant, it never ends, this invitation to put yourself at the center of all things. And when you encounter those things, it might be valuable to say it. To say to yourself, I'm trying to choose, I want to choose something different. And then, of course, we have to practice it. We have to practice humility. We have to do it. We have to do those things that will quiet our ego. Service would be one. Serving someone in your home, serving somewhere out there in the world, doing something that puts you not at the center. Praying, not like the tax collector, but practicing the discipline of prayer with humility. That might be a way of doing it. Apologizing when we've made a mistake. That's practicing humility. Letting someone else go first. Letting someone else choose. These are simple acts, but they are a way of practicing. And friends, spirituality is like most anything else that we are trying to learn and grow in. If you're learning to maybe play the piano, guess what? You're not going to learn to play the piano by just hoping you learn to play the piano. You have to make choices. You have to practice. There's just no other way. If you want to be humble, it's not just enough to say, I'd like to be more humble. We have to practice it. And this is what Christ did. He said it, and he practiced it over and over. He's an example to us to follow. His body was broken. His blood shed out of humility, out of love. And let's be very clear. You might remember Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane agonizing over the path before him, asking God for another way, which is to say, in the most obvious of ways, that humility is really hard. Really hard. This is kind of the biggest or the most significant example that we might be able to think of someone being humble and laying down their life. But every act of humility is challenging. And so we come to this table most every week at the branch to receive something that might help us do the hard things in the days ahead. We believe that in this gift of bread and cup, somehow, mysteriously, in ways we might not exactly be able to pin down or explain, but somehow God meets us here and gives us nourishment to be the people that we're meant to be. So, as we often say, you are welcome to share in this meal today. At the same time, there's no pressure. It is an invitation, but not an expectation to come and to share in this meal. Anyone who is hungry is invited to come. Anyone who is thirsty is invited to come. The way that we'll share this today is we'll have a couple people up front. That's my cue for some of you to be thinking, would I be open to serving communion today? Because that's coming in just a second. We'll have a couple of people up front and a couple of people in the back. Bread and cup and gluten-free will be up here in the front. Bread and cup will be in the back. And you're welcome to come forward or go to the back and take both of those and bring them back to your seat, and we will eat and drink them together. Okay? Who would be willing, I told you it was coming, to help serve communion today? To the two of you, I say thank you. Kevin, is you as well, of course. Thanks so much. Which one would you like today? You do the bread? Thank you, sir. You gonna stay up here? Okay. One of you's got to go to the back. It's up to you. Okay. You guys stay up here. Kelly, thank you so much. You go be that with him back there. Thank you. Nolan, if we need more, there it is. Friends, these are the gifts of God for the people of God. We share them with gratitude and with joy today. Let's do that together. Who laid down his life willing to let his body be broken. Jesus says there's no greater example of love than that. I think he's probably right. So we take and eat remembering that love for us this morning. And there is this emptying of Jesus' life, of course, but it means a filling of our own. His act of love leads to more love. It is unexpected and miraculous and true. And so we take and receive, again, that love for us this morning. We'll pass this little basket around. If you'd like to put your cup in it, it'll make its way around this morning. What I want to do is just share a little bit about something that's coming up for us. I often throw a ball in the backyard with my dog, and as the colder months have come on, it's this whole thing. I put on my snow pants, I put on my boots, glove and hat, because she could go forever. And I usually have about 20 minutes in me, and after 20 minutes, I'm pretty cold, despite all of my bundling. And I thought this week, it just popped into my head as I was feeling cold and probably feeling sorry for myself. I thought, what would it be like to live outside? To be unhoused. And to be frank with you, I cannot imagine what that would be like because I have always had a roof over my head. I think we believe that housing, shelter, is a basic human necessity and right. Everyone should have a place to stay that is safe. And so over the years, we've partnered with various organizations who are working with those who are unhoused. And last year, we got connected to an organization in downtown Grand Rapids that works with people 14 to 24 who are unhoused or who have very unsettled housing, what am I trying to say? Like they don't have consistent housing available to them. Brian, I think up here on the screen is the AYA Collective. Part of what AYA does is that they have bought homes in downtown where people can stay. In each home is a mentor, an adult mentor, and then young adults, 14, again, I think it's actually 18 to 24 for this particular thing that they do, can live here. It's transitional, semi-permanent housing. They just bought 3 new houses in downtown. And what we're doing on January 20th, 2 Saturdays from now, is we're going to one of those houses and we're going to get it ready to be lived in. We're going to clean floorboards and probably mop some floors and paint some walls, probably put together some IKEA furniture, pretty basic stuff, but we're going to help them out. We're doing this, I think, from 12 to 5, if memory serves me correctly. Teresa's nodding yes. You can come from 12 to 2, or 4 to 5, or 2 to 3, or the whole time, of course. We would love to have you come and drop by. Click on that QR code, go to the Church Center app, the details are there. We are still waiting on what exactly the address is. They haven't figured out what house we'll be in, but we'd love to have you come and serve people. Really practice humility, to be honest, and live out our core value of partnership. This is a fundamental part about who the branch is. We try to find partners who are doing good work that we could never do on our own and say to them, how can we help you? And so that's what this is as well. All right. So that's coming up. I see the kids are back. Hello. Yes, are they all back? Did I see that correctly? It's hard to do 2 things at once. Talk to you in a way that you can understand and also pay attention to who's coming back into the room. Anybody who stepped out, any of you young people, you want to share with us maybe one thing that happened down there, fun, interesting, something you learned, something you talked about? Anything come to mind? I was really hoping Bethany would be back in here because then she could for sure tell us as the teacher. But anybody? What's that? They learned something. And what did they learn? I'm wondering what did you talk about today? What was the story? You're doing great right now. This is perfect. No, actually, you're doing wonderfully. Yes. So CJ's asking questions of Levi to kind of get him to say, hey, like, what did you do down there? And he's sharing that he made this medal for CJ. CJ, can you hold up that medal? That thing looks impressive. And I think, if I'm understanding right, that medal has maybe something on it, or it represents something that CJ does well. Yeah? That's cool. It says Mario Kart on it. CJ, you're good at Mario Kart? Come on, man, teach me some things. I keep trying to beat my kids with no luck. Okay. Well, tell me. Yeah, let's talk afterwards. That's what I'm saying. Okay. We thought we'd ask and see if anybody had anything to say, and we almost didn't make it, but we did make it. So thank you for sharing a little bit. All right. We have one more song we're going to sing. Let's stand up and do that together as this group of musicians leads us this morning. A song about change and about what could be.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. Oh, you make me new. You are making me new. things out of us. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. And you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us.
This is really important for us to hold on to, I think. That even when all that it seems to be, all our lives seem to be, or the world seems to be, is dust and dirt, even then God is able to make something new. So that's true in you this week, and in the places you're going to go, and in the people that you're going to meet, in all of those places, and with all of those people. Newness is possible. So hold that hope this week and go and be people who move into the world, yes, with humility, but with that hope. Amen. Thanks for being here, everybody. Good to see you. Branch students, get ready for a party. All right.